Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the 5th Annual OECD Global Blockchain Policy Forum, both to our in-person participants here in Paris and to those joining us online. For governments, successfully navigating the digital transformation of our economies and society is critical. It is one of the defining forces of change in our time. And while digitalization is not new, the constant and accelerating evolution brought on by technological innovation demands continuous adaptation and assessment by governments looking to shape a positive digital future. This means engaging with the innovators, keeping track of fast-moving developments, and evaluating how emerging technologies impact policy objectives for better or for worse. It means balancing the benefits of innovation against the risks and ensuring government responses are informed by evidence and analysis. And it means learning from the experience of other countries and seeking opportunities for cooperation and collaboration on shared challenges, because digital markets are inherently global markets. That is exactly that we are doing here today. Since launching this forum 4 years ago, the OECD has leveraged its analytical capabilities. We built on the forum's discussions to examine blockchain's use across many different sectors, its potential effects on public policy priorities, and its use for policy delivery. Today marks the public launch of the OECD Recommendation on Blockchain and Other Distributed Ledger Technologies, a new international legal instrument and the first intergovernmental standard on blockchain technology. These new standards lays out the expectation of governments for all actors involved in blockchain systems, whether public or private sector, to support market integrity, good conduct, and inclusive innovation. It includes 2 sets of principles. The first principle is addressed to the governments. It calls for cooperation between agencies and across borders to effectively capture the benefits and manage the risks of blockchain technologies. The second principle is addressed to all actors in blockchain networks. It calls for compliance with all laws and regulations, respect for market integrity, effective management of key risks linked to the environment, digital security, and privacy, and efforts to ensure inclusion and interoperability as the technology evolves. The recommendation also reflects the commitment of the OECD members and the parent partners to work together towards a policy environment that promotes beneficial innovation and to ensure coherence and cohesion in policy approaches internationally. This is indeed critical given the cross-border dynamics of blockchain applications. Today also marks the first step in the implementation of this new standard. Our discussion will explore the options and considerations for governments and businesses to reflect this standard in their own decision-making, policy settings, and operations. So let me conclude by thanking you again for joining us on this journey, for your engagement with the OECD's work, and for your contributions over the coming 2 days. Your participation will only serve to enrich further the international community's effort to develop policy that is fit for the future and support a responsible, trustworthy blockchain innovation going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now I'd like to welcome Carmine Di Noia to the podium for the opening remarks.
Okay, so welcome to everyone. So ladies and gentlemen, let me echo actually Deputy Secretary General Yoshiki Takeushi. His welcome to you all. So this is the first blockchain policy forum held in person since 2019. It actually is the first for me. And it's a pleasure to be able to open our doors now physically once again to this dynamic community. And also welcome, obviously, to still all the people that are still, online. But we really hope to have everyone here in the future. This is also the 5th edition of this forum. And this morning, I'd like to offer 3 reflections, basically, on where we have been over the past 4 years in terms of the development of blockchain and policymakers' understanding of the technology's use and impact. Where we are now, focusing in particular on the new OECD policy standard mentioned by our Deputy Secretary General on blockchain, and the future, so where we are going in terms of priorities for the future and how they link to the discussion before us over the next 2 years. Now, where we have been, we have seen in the past, in the recent years, the last 4 years, a remarkable pace of change since the OECD first blockchain policy forum, so along all these years. Over that time, we've seen the size and complexity of crypto assets markets grow with the emergence of an ecosystem of DeFi, of decentralized finance. We've seen decentralized autonomous organizations proliferate to manage communities and resources towards social and commercial goals, and the rising use of non-fungible tokens. We've seen use cases from trade facilitation and supply chain transparency to decentralized identity move from concepts to commercial operations. A transition is taking place with blockchain being judged less on its hype, but more on its merits and its potential use. And on that basis, blockchain has not yet truly delivered on the promises of its early days. Beyond finance, many of these uses are still too small to see a wide-scale impact. But when we consider the development over the last few years, there's clear momentum in terms of innovation, adoption, and commercialization. And that momentum has been matched by policymakers' engagement. Blockchain characteristics of decentralization, automation, disintermediation, immutability, and transparency pose challenges to some of the basic assumptions that sit underneath market supervision, government service delivery, and governance in general, with ramifications for policy objectives, especially in regulated markets. Several major financial markets authorities have expanded their crypto asset units over the last 12 months, and we've seen major policy developments across OECD economies, from the market in crypto assets regulation in the EU, MiCA, to legislative action on stable coins in Japan, to the United States framework for the responsible development of digital assets, released just 2 weeks ago. At the same time, public institutions have also pursued ambitious initiatives to harness this technology for policy delivery. So, for example, the European Commission and Inter-American Development Bank are both building public blockchain infrastructures right now to deliver government services and support cross-border innovation at a continental scale. But we have also many other examples and different uses in many other countries. Over the course of these developments, the OECD has leveraged its analytical capabilities and its convening powers, and hopefully more and more physical, to assess these technologies' impact on public priorities, guide policy responses, and support engagement between the innovators and the policymakers. So this brings me to my second point, so where we are now. Now, the OECD recommendation on blockchain and other decentralized ledger technologies, a long title, but obviously the content is clear, that we approved in June at the MCM, represents the culmination of our work thus far. As Deputy Secretary General Takeuchi mentioned, the recommendation has 2 pillars, but I guess you all know them. One is directed to all actors within blockchain ecosystems, and the other directed to governments, to the adhering governments. The pillar directed to all blockchain actors, so is the first part, represents the expectations from governments and the citizens they represent around the outcomes necessary to build trust and confidence in this technology and its application, which is, a path. It's always a path. It's fair to assume that if markets cannot deliver on these goals, policy interventions may follow. These expectations include the need for mechanisms to ensure compliance, good governance, transparency, and accountability in networks and applications. We cannot have a situation where the same economic activities are held to different standards depending on the technology used to deliver them. They also include pursuing interoperability, a precondition of healthy competition and widespread beneficial impact of this technology, as well as meeting norms and rules around digital security and privacy and contributing to skills development. And they include minimizing environmental impacts, an imperative across all economic activities, and we know why. The recommendations pillar directed to governments, so the second part, represents a commitment to support an enabling policy environment for technological innovation. This includes developing coordinated policy responses, because our analysis shows that the digitalization that blockchain enables cuts across traditional policy silos and requires a cohesive whole-of-government approach. It includes a commitment to building institutional and human capacity in the use and understanding of this technology, and to engage closely with stakeholders, so with many of you, in developing policy. Lastly, it includes a commitment to cooperate internationally in order to maximize the cross-border potential of this technology and minimize the risks to citizens and policy objectives emanating from abroad. The recommendation is cross-sectoral and intended to apply to any current and future use of blockchain technology. It is, we always say, technologically neutral and principle-based, as many of our standards, recognizing that we do not fully know where blockchain innovation will lead. Importantly, the recommendation is not prescriptive on the means to meet these principles, so that there is space both for innovation and innovative policy approaches when implementing this. So while this new standard is informed by our past work, it is also very much forward-looking. And so this brings me to my third and final point on where we are going. The theme of this year's forum is Fit for the Future, supporting responsible and trustworthy innovation. Our discussions over the coming 2 days will explore concrete implementation considerations for putting the OECD recommendation on blockchain into action, from new forms of regulatory approaches to supporting interoperability, from privacy issues to environmental sustainability and international cooperation. We'll also connect with the trends and challenges, and we connect thanks to you, developing in the space where the recommendation can act as a useful guide going forward, and we will focus on two in particular. The first is Web 3, vaunted by some as the next iteration of the internet. The direction of innovation and investment looks set to bring together many of the discrete blockchain use cases we've looked at over previous years into an interconnected ecosystem. This would increasing the complexity of blockchain applications and potentially establishing the technology as a common feature of online life, with all that entails. The second relates to trends in the digitalization of finance. This is where developments in crypto asset markets and the anticipated emergence of major central bank digital currencies may soon overtake our current systems of governance and global cooperation. If the past is an indication, the outlines we see in these areas today will crystallize quickly, and so they warrant the close attention of governments and the international community. So to conclude, technological evolution will continue to be a major force of change in our economies and societies. It will continue to pose challenging questions around what we want out of innovation and how we can guide it towards shared goals in line with our shared values. The OECD will continue to leverage its analytical strengths, its convening powers, and its standard-setting abilities, and to answer these questions with a solid evidence base, with robust policy guidance, with wide engagement, and with collaboration that's fit for the future. Thank you very much.